What's going on, everybody? My name is Ohara, and today we're gonna talk about the latest developments in One Piece. Can you guys feel it too? We're in one of these stages again, where one chapter actually feels a bit better than the last. Oda is really building some hype at the moment here. I think the start of the battle is not far off now. Also, I'm gonna say it right at the start of this video this time, YAMATO for Nakama. I'm pretty sure I'm not as alone with that anymore as I was last week. Now, make sure to grab yourself a nice cup of coffee, or whatever you enjoy drinking, put your feet up and lean back. There is a lot to talk about. Since this chapter's theme is once again preposition to the battle, I will go through the events again one by one. We'll start off where we left off last chapter, in the big hall where Luffy battled Ulti and Page 1. Page 1 has already recovered from Luffy's uppercut and is looking after Ulti. In this scene here, he calls her sis. And while we know that this can be a bit tricky in Japanese and not necessarily mean blood relation, in this case I think it pretty much confirms what we already thought of the two. The similar way they look and behave around each other, I feel definitely speaks for a brother-sister relationship. Pretty soon after, Ulti also recovers as if nothing too major had happened to her. Once again, I really enjoy Oda's portrayal of the Flying Six here. Even though they were beaten by Luffy and Yamato, they didn't take close to as much damage as we originally thought. Page 1 even states that Luffy almost dislocated his jaw, implying that his elephant gun wasn't quite powerful enough to even do that. With this, Oda really nods at the true quality of zones, and in this case Ancient Zone Devil Fruits, that give their users an extraordinary amount of stamina and sturdiness. And I think this truly was the perfect way to handle the situation. Yes, Luffy could of course not be bothered too much by two of the Flying Six if he has to take on a Yonker later on, but at the same time Oda also managed to make it pretty clear that it would take way more than this to take Ulti and Page 1 out for good. Plus, we got this really great encounter between the three of them, which I think most people extremely enjoyed. And in a way, it was probably the most enjoyable fight in Wano for me, at least so far. So I think it's fair to say that none of the Flying Six are really out of the picture, as some have suggested. And I would really bet my favorite coffee mug that Sasaki will also not be tied up for too long. So chapeau to you, Oda. This was a really well constructed scene. Throughout this, Ulti has very quickly become one of my favorite characters in this arc. Plus, even though he's clearly weaker than his sister, Page 1 also got some great characterization in these last 3 chapters, which I also appreciate, especially when in the next scene, he just leaves Ulti behind once he hears that Luffy and Yamato have suddenly stopped running. Just an awesome dynamic that these two have. Speaking of Luffy and Yamato though, how is it that they've stopped? Well, it turns out that just because Luffy didn't feel any bad will from Yamato, doesn't mean he's gonna let himself be carried away just like that. Just as he says himself, why should he drop everything and just follow a random dude with a mask he doesn't even know? One thing that has really started to crystallize over the last couple of arcs is that Luffy has and still is growing as a leader. We could already see some of this on Whole Cake Island, and even more so here in Wano. In this fight against Ulti and Page 1 for instance, he actually does a proper feint before attacking from below. Such tactical fighting is definitely not something Luffy has done for long. And in this scene here, it's good to see that he takes the situation seriously and doesn't let himself simply be sidetracked, as we've actually seen many times before. Now, Yamato however convinces him to give him at least a short moment of time to explain himself, and the two of them vanish into the attic of the castle. And of course, we'll get back to them later. Meanwhile, however, we return to the live stage, where Orochi is giving a history lesson explaining why he's gonna execute a little boy, and tells the audience the story of Toki sending Momo and the others into the future. Now, Kaido's men, however, don't really buy that story at all, and laugh at Orochi for his eccentric behavior. And there, right in their midst, laughing with them sit Robin and Jinbei, drinking and jeering with the Beast Pirates. You really gotta give it to these two. They're just easily the most mature Straw Hats by any measure. I mean, these two have simply done what the plan should have been in the first place. Infiltrate the castle and mix in with Kaido's men. You just gotta love these two. Just a really awesome and unexpected scene here, And also, Evil Robin in that outfit, jugging down some beer, is just something else. I would definitely go drinking with her and Jinbei. At the same time, many of the samurai and the Yakuza have already infiltrated the plaza as well and are waiting for the moment to strike. Now, I don't want to say that I called it, but I called it. I'm pretty sure by now that the moment Momo shall be executed will be the big starting point for the real battle. Before Orochi can continue his hate speech, however, Kaido appears together with all of his 3 calamities, and the atmosphere at the stage changes immediately. As one of the Beast Pirates states himself, even though Kaido is of course on their side, there suddenly is a lot of tension in the air. I think Oda really drives home the point nicely here that Kaido has built his crew on fear and power, and that his men do seem to have nothing but fear and respect for him. Kaido towers over Orochi and proclaims that he's gonna spice up this lazy-ass execution of his. And I think Kaido might be the only one able to say that to Orochi without him going into a complete frenzy. And I think that's exactly what makes this scene so good. Just look at Orochi's face here, as if someone just broke his favorite toy. Also, this panel with Kaido and his 3 calamities towering over Orochi and a crucified Momo in their midst. Whew. This is a real hard contender for the most impressive panel in the arc so far, I would say. A lot of visual impact and meaning is packed into this one. So while Kaido is preparing for his announcement and the moment of the battle is drawing closer and closer, more of the central players have made their way towards the stage. Law transports himself, his men, and the scabbards from the submarine to the back entrance of Onigashima. Now, one thing I quickly want to note is that the guy steering the submarine looks creepy as fuck. He's wearing a white mask with slitted eyes and he looks like the major villain in any other anime. But here he's just Law's helmsman apparently. Just a quick side note. At the same time, the scabbards and Law make it to the entrance, Marco appears as well and drops off Nekomamushi and, yes, Izo. And I gotta say, both of them got one hell of a visual upgrade. Izo's outfit looks damn badass, wearing a white and black kimono, and Nekomamushi has apparently read some Berserk in his free time and has decided to replace his missing arm with a gun. I'm not gonna lie, I really like both of their designs here. And the reunion of Kiko and Izo is of course also heartwarming, as the 2 of them have been separated for so long. Meanwhile, Marco flies away again to check out the shadow he saw in the sea. And now I can't help but feel that this is also some sort of foreshadowing. Did he see Perospero on his slug, or did he just see Law's submarine? Or is someone or something else making its way to Onigashima as well? I'm very curious to see who or what that really is. Also, on a final note here, as always, I love the way Oda draws the environment here. The snowy gate leading into the back of the dome just looks fantastic. And this is just a theme that is very consistent throughout Wano, that Oda manages to create a real vibe and sense for the surroundings this arc. At all times we have an idea where we are, what the place looks and feels like. And that's definitely not something he's able to do every single arc. So I really do appreciate the amount of passion and detail he pours into the backgrounds here. Now the final scene of this chapter just confirms this even more, I think, as Yamato has taken Luffy into the attic of the keep. We're getting to know all the different locations, hidden spaces, as well as the overall layout of Onigashima, and I immensely enjoy that. This really helps to draw the reader into the story. Now, however, let's of course finally talk about the big reveal of this chapter. As it turns out, some of the fan speculation after the last chapter was indeed correct. Yamato does indeed imitate Odin, he indeed was at his execution and touched by his bravery and honor, and he actually did find Odin's journal where he kept all his experiences in. Only that of course Yamato is not a he after all. Yamato is a girl. God damn it, Oda. There you go, making us believe that we already figured everything out about Yamato, and then this. Gotta love this man. Also, I'm usually not really one to comment on stuff like that all too much, but I think objectively, Yamato looks stunning. For me, this might well be one of the best female character designs he's come up with. Yamato has just the right combination of beautiful and badass. And I can just repeat what I said last chapter, Yamato for Straw Hat. only this time I go from 30% serious to 100. Please tell me I'm not alone here. Now, there are obviously some details that we have to discuss as well. First of all, Yamato wanting to open the country and planning to fight alongside Luffy not only supports my theory, Yamato for Straw Hat, but it also might give Luffy and the Alliance the decisive advantage against Kaido, having someone with this much insider knowledge among them now. Secondly, of course, we have to talk about Yamato's connection to Ace. She says that Luffy reminded her of Ace even when they fought. And not only is this of course the perfect way to get Luffy's attention, but it actually also might explain one of the biggest complaints people have had in the community for a while now. Why did Whitebeard not come to help Oden? Well, if Ace actually met someone called Oden in Wano and then told Whitebeard about it when he later joined his crew, it might make sense why Whitebeard thought everything was okay. After all, if Ace met someone called Oden who was doing great and was very much alive, that would just make sense, no? Though this is just a guess. Now thirdly, while Ulti calls Yamato young, she must be at least in her mid-20s if she remembers the execution of Oden. And that also means that she would be the perfect age to join the crew. Now what I also find interesting is that while she calls herself a man, because Oden was a man, and while she got beaten up for that by Kaido for saying so, Kaido still refers to her as his son. Which I gotta say is very progressive thinking on Kaido's side. This man is actually woke as fuck. Kaido's parenting might be tough, but it nonetheless transcends gender boundaries. Good for him. Great parenting. Except of the beating part, I guess. 9 out of 10. Now lastly, Yamato having Oden's journal is a huge deal. Oden has written who knows how many important details about his journeys with Whitebeard and Roger, and very likely about Laugh Tale in this book. Had Kaido found out about this, he might have been able to become Pirate King 20 years ago. And because I don't think that this journal will survive this battle, I think it would make even more sense for Yamato to travel with the Straw Hats. And speaking of Laugh Tale and the true history of the world, I just released a theory about the Ancient Kingdom, Joy Boy, and the origin of the One Piece world as we know it. So make sure to check that out as well. Peace, guys.